if you would you call us to order, please? And do the roll.
Okay. Mr. Smith, Mr. Donahue,
Present.
Mr. Turpin,
Here.
Mr. Shanks,
Here.
Mr. Gilstrap,
Here.
Dr. Miller.
Here.
Thank you. There was a revised agenda that was sent out yesterday, and I believe what we have in front of us reflects that. Is that correct, sir? Thank you, Mr. King. And I understand at this time we're going to go ahead and begin a strategic planning process where we're going to talk a little bit about the design of that process, go through an exercise called a SWOT, where we'll be looking at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats relevant to the electric utility only. We're going to talk a little bit about a timeline to actually complete this process. Selection of an entity to assist in facilitating the process for us, next steps, and then any other items that the committee members have or our representatives from the city government today. So, with that, shall we go ahead and work on the first item?
Yes, we have Mr. Kevin Sperlin, who is with the Extension Service, and he's here today to simply help get through today's meeting at the request of the steering committee that you have a facilitator. He's a colleague of Martha Walker's, and so I want to introduce you to Kevin.
Greatly appreciated. Kevin, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Be glad to. Thank you for having me down. I come from Grayson County. I'm the extension agent there, basically Virginia Tech's face in Grayson County. Glad to serve the people there. I work mainly with the farm businesses there, but I have worked quite a bit with Martha Walker on facilitation and civic leadership. Helped our Grayson County Planning Commission do a facilitation event for them, and also worked with our local school system as they were closing some schools. They had a series of community meetings to see what to do with those abandoned schools, and I led those community information gathering sessions. I know Martha regrets not being able to be with you today. I know several of you asked for her by name. I consider it quite an honor that she would ask me to be here in her place, and very much take that as an honor that she would ask me. So that's a little bit about me. I really feel like that for two reasons I enjoy being here, and one of them is I believe that whether I'm working with a farm group or my local government at home, civic nonprofit groups, I really believe that in all those instances, decisions and actions come down to the people that make those, and I like to help folks through those. So that's why I'm here to help you all out today, to listen, to record as best I can your thoughts and capture those for you, and that's what my role will be. I'll also try to keep things moving, and feel free as we go through this process, as you are comfortable to share openly and honestly. I want you to feel like you're comfortable to do that, and if you have disagreeing opinions about things, I welcome those. I hope you feel comfortable to share those things. That's how we have forward momentum, is to be able to bring those things out and be able to talk through those. So I want you to feel comfortable to share. I'm not scared of that, and I want you to be able to share honestly. I also ask that if it's agreeable for everyone, that as you do that, that we're respectful of each other's opinions, we're open-minded, and I'll do my best on my end to make sure that I'm using your time effectively, and we can have enough time for public comment at the end, and we'll move right through this. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer those now, or we can jump right in. Yes, sir.
I've got two questions. Kevin, what's your last name again?
Sperlin, S-P-U-R-L-I-N.
Have you, I assume that you've gotten some background information about our charge here, this commission's charge?
I have, and I watched the last meeting, particularly the last 30 minutes. I'm aware that you all have had quite a bit of information put forward in front of you, and recognize that you all asked for, I know the SWOT came up on that last meeting, so.
Is that the process we're going to go through today?
Well, it's going to depend on you all. We'll go where you want me to go. I am prepared to do a SWOT analysis, but actually, if you all will permit, I think maybe it would be good to take a step back and maybe talk a little bit first off, and I'll start to capture some things right here, but maybe my first question that I will pose to the group is, just so that I know how to form that SWOT analysis, is what is the outcome that you all want to see from this? As I understand the charge that you all have is to develop some kind of a report. So I would be willing to open up right here and just say, what should that look like? So I'll pose that question. What do you want out of that? Yes?
Trying to arrive at something that will benefit our customers, the city and the county. What will benefit them the most? Selling or keeping the utilities?
To include in industry.
And
Okay, benefit to the customers, and those customers would include, and I'll grab another pen here. And I just
City
want to clarify.
residents and non-city residents, businesses.
I'll try to keep up, and I will apologize in advance of any misspelling as I try to. So city and non-city residents.
All right.
Others?
Businesses, industry.
Business and industry. Okay.
And I'll cover for you. I heard a quote once that they said, and I think it was Thomas Jefferson, who said that the person that can spell a word only one way has a very shallow mind.
Thank you.
Well said.
Any others? So the benefits to the customers, including all of these entities, we want to make sure, as I understand it, that we're thinking about each one of those. What else? So this,
One of the biggest concerns is, as we develop our SWOT, is to, our goal here is not necessarily to make a decision about buying or selling Danville Power.
okay.
What our goal is to analyze several options, which includes that option.
Yeah.
But I think we all would like to see us determine what steps we can take to become a more efficient operation and to be more competitive on the sale of our product
Okay.
to our customers.
So that report, just to kind of bring it back to that, should include an analysis of all the options, which would include the efficiency, and then the other one was
Efficiency, and also efficiency of internal operations, and also competitive
Competitive
acquisition of our product that we sell.
okay.
We need a lower cost of supply to bring the rates down.
Okay.
What he said.
I'll try to catch up here.
Take your
Going
time.
back to what Councilman Shanks was referring to, we want to analyze all options, but we certainly want to identify our best options
Okay.
to report to Utility Commission and Council.
And along, as you write that, along those same lines, there are parties yet to have been approached that we need somewhere in this process to include before we finish what you've started here today.
Do you want to start right now and name off some of those? Is this the appropriate time to do that, or no?
Let's keep going on the left.
on
to
this
right,
one?
Just for
Okay.
right now. Yeah.
Sounds good. So as I see it
And
right,
I think it's important to ID the best options to benefit our customer groups. But we also have a responsibility from a revenue perspective for city operations.
For the stakeholders of the operation, which are the citizens of Danville.
Right.
Okay.
But as we begin to identify those options, that revenue would come into play either through taxes or you.
Correct.
So I put down here also the consideration of the impact to the citizens of Danville.
Who are the stakeholders in the business?
Going back to options, there may be different options for different, your top line identifies the three constituencies. There may be different options for those three, and we need to analyze
Okay.
Individually.
Maybe different options. And just so that you all are clear, whenever we finish with all of this, if it's myself or someone will summarize all of this so that you all can have this back, obviously. Any other things that we want to capture here? So benefits to the customer. So that report, if that's kind of the output or the outcome of this, that should include benefit to the customers, whether they be city residents, non-city residents, business, industry, different options for each to explore those in each of those contexts or for each of those groups, to look at and analyze all the options, which I'm sure you've had several meetings already, as I understand, and several of these you've already started that process, looking at the efficiency, competitive rates, low-cost supply, and then considering the impact to the stakeholders.
Would you add, after the word ID best options to benefit, it should be customer groups?
Okay. Yes. Can make that change.
Because to Councilman Shank's point, we may have different answers for different groups.
Sure.
And I know this would be time consuming, but we would almost need to do a SWOT analysis of each option.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I will put that in with the analyzing.
Well, I
That would
don't
be
think you need to
appropriate.
put that anywhere. That was just for the committees.
I'd put that down a second
Martha
page.
always says if it's not written down, it wasn't said. So we're going to go ahead. Of course, I'm not used to everything being recorded here, but I'm going to put this here. That this really the SWOT is the process once you start evaluating those, and I think that's why I felt like, based on what I saw before, that we wanted to start with this so that if we did do SWOT analysis today, we would know what are we actually doing the analysis of. If that makes sense.
There's one other component to the councilman's comments about the SWOT on each alternative. Each alternative is also going to provide a certain set profile of risk and reward. And we need to understand what the risk and the reward or the benefits are, okay?
Sure.
So when we think about benefits to the customers, we have to realize that everything comes with a specific set of risks that need to be managed and evaluated.
Okay.
So that would be helpful. Thanks.
Impact. I'll put it right here. Impact.
So just a risk analysis.
Risk analysis. And that would be for both stakeholders and for the customer groups.
And that's important because your most economical, cheapest route may not be the most beneficial to the customers. I mean, you might get low rates, but then you get lousy service.
Sure.
And if something, if you have a tornado, hurricane, blah, 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 and you're out of power and you've got a utility that takes a week to 2 weeks to get here, that might not be your best option, even though they're cheaper. So you have to look at the benefits and the risk on both sides.
Well, I guess my question, and I sort of mentioned this earlier, is when we do a SWOT and we begin listing strengths, are we listing strengths for maintaining ownership, not maintaining ownership, or something in between?
Yeah. And we could do kind of a modified SWOT where we talk, instead of just saying strengths, we might use the word benefits. What are the potential benefits?
Of each.
Of each. What are the potential challenges of each?
Okay.
Instead of using maybe strengths and weaknesses, we could use benefits and challenges. And that would be,
I'm gonna perhaps have a bit of a, I think we want to think about our current state. Is
Okay.
that not correct?
Sure.
So if we're going to evaluate our current state of affairs with the utility, how are we going to go about that?
Now that would be, if that's what you want to talk about as far as strengths and weaknesses.
I get a
added
little,
as
I get a
is.
little concerned when we start talking about modifying words like benefits, et cetera, because we may be anticipating a future state condition.
Sure.
All right?
We
So
can
I like to
stick
keep
with-
things time-bound in a process like this.
And that would
We can do
actually
that.
be the first step. I mean,
Yeah.
our current state is where we really want to start.
Exactly.
And then from there, grow out to look at some options.
Right.
Right.
So the SWOT on the options, and that's why we want to clarify. So if we did a SWOT right now with current state, then that may be the place where we.
We've
start
learned a
the
lot over the
strengths.
last few months. We've had the benefit of the staff doing a tremendous job of giving us a set of information and some clarity, but we haven't really had an opportunity to throw it up on the wall ourselves. So if we could put a foundation in place that describes the strengths, weaknesses or problems, I don't care what word you use, the opportunities and threats for the electric utility today, that would be very helpful,
Okay.
as we know it.
Let me ask this next question. Is there anything more that we need to add here, or does this generally capture the direction that you all want to go? I see some nods that says, okay. So,
And that, by the way, that report is a recommendation to council,
okay,
3 of whom are represented.
are with us, okay. So do I get a feeling that you're ready to, with this, the consensus here, this is what we're trying to do, to go ahead and start that SWOT now on the current state? Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, any objections? I want to tear this down and jump ahead if you're not all ready.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet, and I'm on board with whatever we decide here as a group. There's a wealth of information here. There are at least 2 parties we haven't identified, that we haven't talked to.
Talk to them now.
And I'm not sure that we want to proceed too far in the SWOT without doing that.
Well, I think we've got actually, I mean, we can come back and finish up the SWOT, but we can start it today. Because we've really got 3 elements, I think, that are missing, right? We've got, why don't you go ahead, I mean,
Okay, you're talking about other parties?
yeah.
Well, we have talked about speaking with Appalachian, who has expressed a desire or interest in doing so. Appalachian Power or American Electric Power. And also Duke Energy has expressed an interest in getting some information from us and listening to that information and providing some assistance if desired.
Okay,
PJM has expressed an interest to come and speak to the commission about its operations and what it provides for us,
okay,
for the city of Danville. So I think that's another entity. And we also have the results of, is it an assessment, Philip, that's currently being done?
They call it an organizational, it's titled organizational checkup.
The Hometown Solutions people that we talked to a couple months ago came in, they did a survey, they interviewed staff of both the city and the utility. Mr. Turpin and I sat in on one of their meetings, and they surveyed by interviewing employees and looked into the operation of the actual work of the utility in terms of service calls and inventory control and manpower and staffing and how people felt about working for the utility. And as far as going and talking to the finance director of the city and understanding how the accounting operated and the relationship with the city in terms of budgets, and they're going to come back to us next Monday, I believe, it's February the 2nd, with a report. That is a scheduled meeting. We had a scheduled meeting for the 3rd. We're not going to do that. I don't think we've talked about that yet. They wanted to. I felt like, and also considering having 2 meetings in a row, that we would come in and they could give us the executive summary bullet points, and this is going to be a fairly lengthy report, and we can take it home and think about it and digest it. It's certainly an important input, I believe, into what we're going to talk about here as we get to the end of it. And so that's what that's about. Now, and I'd like to say something else while I'm here. I apologize I'm late. I got a little crossed up on what time the meeting was going to start, and I had to go do something. I apologize for that. We need to make sure that we've got an understanding among us of where we are now, I believe. Going back to the weaknesses comment that was made and what Mr. Shanks just said, I think the first thing we need to do is we need to agree on where we are. And that's when we're going to find out what our strengths and our weaknesses are, and then we can work on the areas. I think we kind of know what they are, but it may be a good idea if we could just kind of put them in that list about where are we today. We obviously want to find our best options, but I think if we agree where we are as a group, we'll get there a lot faster and a lot more efficiently. I just want to throw that out as you think about it. In meeting with some of these other groups, certainly they're not overarching issues, but as we find a weakness or strength, there certainly are some other entities that we want to reach out to help us either overcome those weaknesses or assist us in making sure that we keep those strengths in place.
So hometown,
Organization checkup from hometown.
okay, organization checkup.
Fred, does that complete the list?
That completes the list, but I'd like to follow up on what Chairman Smith just said. I'm not sure, I'm not clear in my mind, and maybe I agree we need to understand where we are today, but I'm not sure we know where we are today until we speak to at least 3 of those parties, maybe all 4. So my question is, and I can go either way, my question is, are we at a point to carry the SWAT too far before we have an opportunity to speak to these other parties?
Do you want to know what our strengths? Do we want to list what our strengths and weaknesses are? I mean,
yes,
is that what we want to do?
absolutely, yes.
Is that the first thing we want to do?
I think so.
Okay. Well, we got to list the strengths and the weaknesses before we can then decide that we've got a weakness and we need to talk to Appalachian
Okay.
Duke because they are going to help us with the weakness.
Well,
Right?
yeah.
I think you understand what I'm saying. That's an example. So, I mean, I'm thinking of it as the most basic jumping off point. I'm sorry, Mr. Gilstrap.
We can always come back and add to
Sure.
Yes.
strengths and weaknesses. I mean, what we list today is not the final. They may be many things. They may be people from the public that jogs our memories or bring some good points to us that we would add.
Well, let me just pause here for a second and just remind you all that strengths and weaknesses would be internal to your utility. And then the threats and opportunities would be external. So if any of these are more enlightening on external things, then that would be the opportunities and threats piece of that. So, you know.
And
I
the
agree with that.
organizational checkup is actually on the
That
left
would be-
side, the strengths and weaknesses. We got a lot to capture, so, you know, Appalachian, Duke, PJM also are helping us look at the industry structure.
Correct.
You know, and we've already had considerable input from AMP, you know, who is our current partner. So I think that would be helpful.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, can we as a committee agree that we want to do away with that first time frame? I know that's later on the agenda, but all that we've got to do, I don't know that we can keep that time frame.
I agree 100% that we need to lay aside all the timeframes. And, yes, sir.
I'd like to go, agree with you wholeheartedly. I believe the original thought process may have been to get this steering committee to review the process, do the review process in time for a budget for this upcoming year, and that may or may not be the case, but I think that was originally what we were thinking. And realistically, that's not realistic. So I think that time, the original time frame is no longer prudent, and we probably shouldn't even establish end dates yet.
Is everybody, yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
In terms of the time frame, we don't want to rush through this, but at the same time, I think we need to be aware that this sort of unknown situation here is having an effect, I feel like, on the employees of the electric department. It's creating anxiety and uncertainty. And certainly I would think having a problem with hiring a director of the electric department because of the unknowns. So I think we need to be aware we can't drag it on too long because it is going to affect that. Mm-hmm. And the other thought I had was the big picture is looks like we have two main options here. Either to keep the utility and try to do what we can to improve it in terms of bringing the rates down, better source of supply, improvements internally, or the other option is to maybe to sell the utility. And those are I think we need to look at the strength and weakness of those two big options.
Could I add one third option? A hybrid of the two.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Keep the utility, but sell a portion of it.
And I'm also going to interject here from a process
Write that down.
perspective. While I believe that that is something that needs to be considered, when you're evaluating your current state, which is what we want to begin with now, I think it's important that we don't look at it from a lens of these are the solutions.
Mm-hmm.
I 100% agree that we've got three main ways that we can go. We can have a hybrid solution, we can fix it, you know, as a whole, or we can sell it as a whole. But that really comes down towards the end of the process as we begin to use that to evaluate options.
Right.
Would it be helpful if I just jotted down here kind of what you're saying as far as doing a current state analysis and then the options so that it keeps us on track as far as when we get into a discussion that we're focused on, you know, the strengths and weakness of the current state versus, would that be
Yes.
helpful? Okay.
As you write that down, I'd like for the benefit of the public to be aware that we keep talking about these options, and they're not really our options. They're they would be our recommendation.
Right.
So, for consideration, we certainly don't want to imply that this group of individuals is involved in the decision being made solely.
Just
Okay. So what I've heard is that you know, there's been a lot of discussion, first off, you know, starting with the current analysis of the state of the utility as it is. Doing that initially, then we move into the analysis of the options. And those very well may be utilizing the exact same tools. But is this the framework? And this would actually potentially go in and help you as you build a report so that you can start off with, this is our current state, and outline that in your report, and then come back and say, these are, you know, these are what we have discovered through the analysis of our options. Is that what I'm capturing from your discussion?
Go ahead and talk to us.
Yeah, I want to remind you, we're just doing electric, not all the utilities.
Okay.
Just electric.
Just electric.
And I would be curious to know if the electric division has already completed any such analysis of your current state, strengths, weaknesses.
Hometown Connections reports you'll see next week gives you some very good.
I know, that's an outside, that's a consultant.
Right.
I'm talking about, have you gotten employees' input into your current state of
No, not
the
in
utility?
conjunction with your work, no.
Okay.
Where's that hometown? I thought they were supposed to go to employees and get their,
Oh, they have.
they have, okay.
And
John's question, I think, was directed at whether or not internally they had talked to the employees.
Internally, yeah, that's my
And
question.
that's not true, because hometown's not internal. I think that was the point, Dr. Miller.
The Hometown Connections report will tell their analysis of what our utility looks compared to industry.
All right, let me rephrase that question. When's the last time, besides the one we're doing presently, hometown, when's the last time the electric division has analyzed itself? Anybody know?
we did it in 2008.
Okay.
We prepared a strategic plan. I'm not sure it would rise to the level that you're expecting, but we did identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, set goals, set action plans.
Is that something that we could look at, or should we
Sure.
look at?
It's dated, but sure.
Yeah, but it kind of would give us some insight.
It's a good idea.
It would give you a snapshot at that date as to what was on the platter, what was being thought about.
And I think you'll be pleased with the information that will be at your disposal in this organizational checkup, because they're looking at maybe as many as 10 categories
And
about,
that,
you know, the workforce, the power supply, the level of safety, the state of governance.
but we're actually not going to get so much as a SWOT, but we're going to get a benchmark.
You're going to get
Reports.
raw material that I think you might find will work into your SWOT.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that benchmarking information will be very beneficial, because it should allow us to understand how the utility operates versus best practices among peers. And that, I think it'll be very beneficial for us to get.
And Joe, can you, for my information, how many change or utility directors have we had? How many different utility directors have we had since 2008? Since we did this last 5 years, how many directors have we had?
We've gone through 3.
3 full and 1 interim?
Well,
Still here.
he's hedging his bets.
Well, is Jason part of the 3?
No.
He's number 4.
Okay, he's number 4. Okay.
And Jim Harr's number 5.
Well, Jim Har
Was interim twice.
was interim twice.
Right.
Okay.
And certainly, I think that ought to be counted, because it was for some fairly significant periods of time. I mean, it wasn't for 60 days.
It was
It was for,
several
for
months.
a long period of time.
Yeah.
Before we leave the
Colors
hometown report,
fills in your answer. Thank you.
we're cleaning up that report and finalizing. We were trying to have it for you today, so you could take. We're going to email it out either tomorrow or Thursday,
Oh, that would be great.
so you can have it for.
Have it for a read ahead? Wonderful.
That's the 2008.
No, this is the organizational checkup
Okay,
report.
this one. Okay. I want to add the 2008 data here just
I
as
believe
another.
that's the right date.
Okay.
While you're adding to that list, do we agree that AMP Ohio needs to be on the list? We've already heard from them, but
Yes, I would put them up as previously.
AMP Ohio, AMP,
AMP.
AMP.
Okay. Okay. Satisfied with that list? Any others?
Well, obviously, we've also heard from our industry customers
Okay.
as well as our citizens. And we'll continue to. We'll continue through this process to hear from the public.
I'll actually put those separate.
I have one more for you, Terry.
Yes, sir.
Mecklenburg Co-op / Old Dominion Electric Co-op.
Okay. Slash.
Just a point of clarification for your benefit, that when they said 4 or 5 director of utilities, that's director of utility, that's not director of the electric department. We probably only had one director of electric department. Is that
We've gone through 3 of those.
Three.
3 of those?
Yeah. Yep, 3.
So we've gone through 3 utility directors and 3 electric directors. And interims in both.
Period of stability.
Right. And we can be happy to provide background information on explaining that we had everything from, as far as the power and light, or the director position, just simply a bad fit, to somebody that almost tripled their income moving to another utility.
When you do provide that information, can you also provide industry background where the previous work was?
Yes. Do you need that information right away, or is that something?
I don't. I mean, it's
But there's been, depending on how deep you want to go into your weaknesses part of this, a problem that has plagued the utility for decades really is instability in key management positions. And looking at just the power and light, that's been in the power and light director and some turnover in key division directors, but in terms of the utility as a whole, it's in the utility director, and so the lack of stability has hurt the utility. I'm not sure how much it's hurt on some bigger issues you're looking at, but it's hurt the operation of the utility.
Can you, the information's already been provided to us on a monthly basis, but it's not a number I commit to record. With regard to the power and light division, what overall utilities, you have a director of overall utilities that's in charge of an overall budget. In power and light, they're in charge of an overall power and light budget. What does that power and light budget number, how does that compare with the overall?
Well, you look, those of you that are on the utility commission saw the budget yesterday, and Jenny, I'm sure from memory, can tell you how many total and what the electric fund constitutes.
Just generally, and I mean, I saw those same numbers yesterday, but I didn't commit it to memory.
$180 million.
180 for
Power and
all,
light. Power
and
and
then,
light. Power and light, 180 million.
and overall the entire utility? And I'm sorry to put you on the spot. It would be a number. It's a large, would you agree that power and light is a very large majority
Yes,
of the entire?
it is.
Approaching
Definitely.
2/3 on revenue.
Yes.
Okay, that's.
I would say it's
that was my
2/3 of the
point.
total revenue.
Yes, it's definitely the largest by far.
Well, just to kind of bring us back around, is there other information or parties that would help you complete that SWOT analysis? Are we ready to move maybe to that? I know some comments have already come out kind of in that vein, so if you're ready, I'll rip and we'll go.
Yeah, I think
What
that,
about hometown? Would that be another party? Hometown's up there?
Well, I got the organizational
Checkup,
checkup, if that's okay. So I'll pull this off. I'll just keep it over here where you can see this. I'll actually pull this one back off as well, and are you ready to start with the strengths and weaknesses and at least get a initial? I'll set this aside. So right now, just to clarify, we're talking strengths and weaknesses. And this is internal to the electric utility, as it is now, currently. So weaknesses are always the easy ones. So let's start with a few strengths first. We can think of some of those.
I think our customers will concur with this wholeheartedly, and particularly residential. I can't speak for industrial because I don't hear from that many. But one of our biggest strengths is customer service in providing the power. I think in terms of the operation, in terms of recovering from an outage, weather conditions, whatever, I think I constantly hear how good our utility is relative to some of the bigger ones, our power and light division.
Okay, so customer service, and I gave the example of recovering from the outage.
reliability,
Okay,
reliability in the operation of providing the electricity 24/7. That's a very important reliability. That's a very important issue when you run an electric utility.
And that's what I intended, so you might want to strike the top one because that captures,
I think it's both.
okay.
One is responsiveness, right?
Prompt service.
And I am talking about the delivery of the product. I want to make sure that's what is read out of that statement.
okay.
The customer service is more than just responding to a crisis. I mean, you got everyday customer service. And I think I would leave it up there as a strength. As a customer service.
I would like to expand customer service and think of it in a more traditional way when you think of dealing with your customers about financial or accounting matters or things like that, trying to please them. We've gone through a period here in the last few years. We've had some real problems with people paying their bills and getting cut off, and a lot of complaints and going back and forth. That was a customer service issue, and it was a weakness at the time because we had a lot of people who were really had a hard time paying their bills. We had a couple of bad winters. This is back in 12 and 13 maybe. But the strength is that our customer service department, we responded to the challenge of helping people pay their bills. And we went through, and we didn't modify the payment plans once, we modified them a second time. And we came up with a customer service plan, a payment plan that satisfied a lot of people. That's good customer service, because when you got a problem, we fixed it. And we didn't quite get it right the first time, and then we fixed it. And we did it in a very methodical, to me, smart way. We thought about when people got their Social Security checks. We made sure they didn't overlap at the wrong time of the month. I mean, we did a lot of thinking and a lot of really good problem solving with that customer service issue.
A clarification, Mr. Chair. That customer service that you're referring to, is that within the electric service or electric division, or is that separate in a financial services.
Within the utility, it's within the utility.
That is within all utilities, though. Okay.
The customer service people are utility people.
Who
The
have
collection
financial
people are, the
questions
collection
also.
people are city employees,
Collections are finance, customer services, utility.
Utility.
Okay.
left, right.
Of course, that leads to the fact we have synergy. We're able to share the benefits of the other utilities, services, and also the other departments in the city. We also have control. We control the rates, we control the service, the expansion by being within the city.
Maybe perhaps use the word local control.
Okay. I'll capture this one first and then,
We're not at the whims of the State Public Service Commission, so local control.
We also receive a rate of return on our investment, which helps keep taxes lower.
okay?
And that rate of return is realized by those who invested through their living in the city and investing through their taxes and use of the utility. So it's it's definitely a rate of return that is for the stakeholder.
I'll include that in.
One thing we've done is provide incentive programs and to things like how to best insulate your house, programs that gave you rebates for economical appliances. I guess that's utility.
Energy efficiency.
Energy efficiency.
I guess that's utilities initiated that.
It's the Home Save program.
The home state program. So.
And similar program for the businesses as well.
Yeah, the lighting program, Custom Save.
And those originate out of
The
the
utility.
utility.
Yeah, whereas if we're a Duke or a public power provider, we have to get approval from the Public Service Commission to even offer those. AEP has not been able to offer those because the Public Service Commission wouldn't approve it. It's just as an example.
Jason, do you have monthly meetings with our industry customers? I know I attended one. I don't know how often you meet.
We're going to try to have them quarterly.
Quarterly.
Last one we had was last summer. The next one we're going to do is in February. It's on demand response for industry customers that want to participate in our curtailment program where they can reduce load and get paid by PJM for reducing load during peak times. So that's a program that we'll offer this year.
By the way, that's a strength, is the demand curtailment program for industry. I think another strength, back to the synergy thing, is again, we offer a one-stop shop. People are able, we bundle our electric with gas, water, sewage, garbage, and telecom. One-stop shop.
An additional strength, and we've talked local, but in terms of the local relationship between the utility provider and the customer. In other words, it's terrible to have to deal with a utility that's not, to deal with all the call centers that you have to deal with and some other utilities. Here, one of the strengths of our program is the local relationship with the customer.
And if I could follow up on that, we have employees who are also stakeholders and customers.
I'm going to switch over here and just mark this out. We'll keep going with strengths.
They don't come here from Roanoke.
the people who work within there have a vested interest in that utility.
Stakeholders and their customers as well, for the most part.
Okay?
I would say one of our strengths would be our employees and the knowledge of our employees.
Now we've got to figure out what obviously is missing. The obvious.
There is an obvious one missing, if I could suggest.
Yes.
Support of economic development, and I'm not talking about the unpopular funds. I'm talking about day in and day out, from industrial park to river district. There's very little that we could have accomplished, from landing IKEA to upfitting one of the buildings in the river district, had we not had the ability to move
Quickly.
decisively and quickly. And we have a great relationship with our commercial transmission provider, and I'm sure they would do their best, but you'd be dealing with a large corporation that would take a lot more time to make a decision and would have to put it through a...
So we're saying economic development impact,
Well, it's supporting economic development.
supporting.
Okay.
It's about agility, isn't it?
Agility,
Agility, speed.
Yeah,
Be able to make a
exactly.
decision quickly, not having to call back to Columbus, Ohio to get a decision.
And that applies not just to existing customers, but even to prospective customers who need numbers quickly, which puts us in a very beneficial position.
Yeah, we worked, as an example, we had worked in Martinsville for 5 years to get power stabilized in one of the industrial parks for process industry customers whose equipment was being shut down left and right. 5 years before we could actually get AEP to do something.
Okay, so I've captured that, speed and agility to support economic development. That's nice. Any others?
What about utility commission?
I don't know about that strength. Local control. Local control.
Local relationships.
Yeah.
Local control.
Local control.
Any others?
I don't know if that's,
Okay, now,
you're bad.
please understand, if we stop now and switch gears, you can come back and revisit this. This is yours, your thoughts, so feel free to come back to these if, what point. So I'll do one last call for strengths.
I'm sure there are more obvious ones missing, but so hopefully we will come back.
Okay,
All right.
good. I'll set these aside. I had a feeling we were going to have, with almost 2 hours, we might have a lot of sheets tore off here, but that's okay. We got plenty. So, appreciate all of the comments on the strengths. It's good when you can fill up several pages of those. And obviously that will give you some comparisons as you start to evaluate options. Something to compare to, that baseline. So I guess now we can move over to the weaknesses side. So I will start on this. So you can go ahead and shoot.
We have very little generation of power. We generate very little here locally. We have,
Percentage.
yeah, percentage is very small. We have the generation plant up in. It does have, but it's a very small percentage. So we have to depend on the open market. We have to buy power from other entities, and somewhat it's their whim is, the prices.
Okay.
Membership in PJM.
Okay. And just to clarify, weakness may be generating little power, buying power from others. You know, keep that in the back of your mind as you start thinking later on about the threats and what that impact can be from the external perspective. Okay, and you said the membership.
And PJM, and membership's loosely defined.
We're in a PGM service area.
PGM?
PJ.
PJM, okay. PJM, okay.
Current rate structure, and that's not a historical problem. That's a kind of a new problem, weakness.
Now, I will put in parentheses more of a current issue. Okay?
What about, I'm just gonna throw this up, but you mentioned PJM, but what about AMP?
Well,
I don't know that's,
is that more of a
Weakness.
threat, or is that something
Plus and
that's
minus, I guess.
Can I explain it to you?
Well, we didn't list it as a strength, and I really can't see I personally don't see the advantages of it.
Okay.
I think that's still debatable, and maybe we should list it on both sides
I think so.
and
I think
wear
it's
that
plus and
out.
minus.
But I mean, there are, like for instance, some of the hydro investments are going to pay off, are going to be strengths.
They're starting
for
to pay
years.
off.
And some of the other investments we made are hurting us because things didn't happen on time.
Let me suggest this to you. One of the strengths is that we have a power portfolio. That we have, a decision was made several years ago that we were going to, instead of go to the open market and buy power willy-nilly and buy short-term strips, we wanted to have some control, long-term control over our power supply. So we participated with AMP to buy portions, to buy pieces of some generating projects.
What AMP,
And we've
-AMP.
okay.
And we've got some coal, and we've got gas, and we've got hydro. Fine. We've got a power supply portfolio. That's a strength to me. The weakness is we've got a power supply portfolio, and it seems to be not as well designed and built up in a way that serves us at this time as well as it may have when we started in some of these
When
projects.
did we start?
That's the weakness.
2008.
That's the
We
problem.
started with AMP in 2008.
Right.
So,
I guess, I said we're at the very beginning, some of these we need to evaluate on their own. But
Sure. Right, right.
The bottom line-
AMP has a major increase last year, while other ones had decreases.
So what we found is our,
Decrease.
Yeah.
our,
According to
our,
this.
our AMP assets costs are a weakness. AMP power asset costs are a weakness. They can buy strips pretty cheap, but their generating units are coming in very high.
and to qualify that, it's not necessarily the rate structure, it's the cost of the supply that's affecting the rates.
okay. And that would be right here.
Yes, that's
But
correct.
it's cost of supply, not necessarily the rate structure per se.
Okay. Would you rather me strike that and put cost of the supply?
Cost of supply.
Yep, that's more accurate. I agree with
Is
you.
that more appropriate?
Yes.
Well, now, did you mean like, so that's different from like industry, our rates for industries are quite high.
Well, that's true. So that would be a different rate structure. So
Well,
Well,
it's
do-
due to the cost of supply, they're high.
Well, but it's a weakness. I
It's a
mean, right
weakness.
now, when you think about supporting economic development, our rate structure
For industry.
is a weakness.
So
We have
that needs
put
to
that
go back
It's got to go
up.
back up.
Okay.
But it's a different than the one I brought up.
Cost of supply is a root cause, but the net effect is we're not competitive.
The rates to the industrial customers is detrimental to them now and also expansion.
And to economic
Okay,
development.
so up here, it was more the cost of supply. Here, you're really, is this focused on the industrial side, or is this,
I mean, the rates to the industries, It's high because the supply is cost. It's not because we've got the cost of service rates out of balance.
But,
You follow?
but I would argue that we have chosen to divide the rate structure differently between economic development aspect and residential aspect. And that choice is hurting the commercial industrial customer.
Generally speaking, if I'm Dominion Power, and I am providing power to an industry, I give them a tremendous discount because they keep my base load up 24/7. Because of the way we purchase power and we don't have base load assets where we can reward somebody for keeping a steady structure, our structures is not competitive with those power companies that have invested in those assets and want to keep them base loaded. And I don't know how we are. Rate structure is a problem.
Well, I understood that the cost of service study that's underway said that our rates were not out of balance in terms of cost of serving the various class of customers.
We have not gotten our feedback from that rate structure. We had
That's what I was told.
We had very specific questions, and we have not gotten our responses.
Can I weigh in on that for just a moment? And I'm going to side with Mr. Turpin on this one because we have been told, and it's been in the narratives that we've had already, cross-subsidization. One of the goals of our cost of service study is not to have any cross-subsidization.
That's right.
Right? They say it. They said it 2 or 3 times in the material we got. Well, what does that mean? To me, it means that we are not going to give a volume discount to industrial customers because you can't have both.
So, but
that's the dilemma we're in.
But our weakness, that very rate structure, is a weakness.
Exactly.
Okay.
At least it doesn't allow us any kind of flexibility.
And that's a weakness.
Call Mr. King.
Mr. King.
And oh, by the way, if you look at the investments that we've made to support economic development, all right? $8-10 million thrown into parks, okay? Have those parks been loaded? No. Who bears the cost of the depreciation? The ratepayers do.
But
So we have not even looked at the fact, have we overinvested to support economic development? And are we penalizing our ratepayers because of it?
you're going to penalize the residential customers if they subsidize you giving them the industrial customers a lower rate that's not justified by the actual cost to serve that industry. So if you've got the margin you charge the industrial customer at the proper balance, the problem with the rate being high is the cost of supply.
Can I interject?
No, give me a minute, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
1 minute.
Okay, let me say this again, all right? We have not looked at our asset base and how productively it's being utilized. What load are we placing on the capacity that we have installed? We have also not gotten information from our rate study as to whether all of our customers are being penalized by that, or are we penalizing just our industrial customers where the bulk of that economic development investment has been made. We don't have that information yet.
We are analyzing the present state.
Right.
The present state of the studies that have been provided to us show us at a higher rate.
Right.
Okay. I mean, now, I know everybody said they may change, but the present state is our rates are higher.
Agreed.
Especially industry.
Two other.
So my question, which I think originally was, is AMP a weakness or strength? I would say AMP, in my opinion, and what I've heard and studied and been informed by citizens, is that I would question PJM and AMP's reliability and dependability. I really question, I don't see anything nonprofit about AMP. And since 2008, we joined AMP, we have had difficulties with our rates. And to me, we were better off buying directly. Personal opinion.
So how can I capture that as a weakness? What would you have me put here as your?
I would leave AMP and PJM up as a weakness to be discussed.
Okay. And again, let me just, throw this out again, just to remind you that, we're looking at this from the standpoint of the things that exist now. Irregardless of what they do on the external, we'll revisit those again. So do you want me to just add that one up here beside of PJM, or is that a different?
A question mark.
Or just AMP down here? So
AMP a question mark.
The cost of
I think we
supply
agree with
is a
PJM.
problem, and AMP and PJM has
They provide
either
the supply.
contributed to it or helped us, and it's a question.
Okay,
Yeah.
They're
that's
plus and
both.
minus. I think they're plus and
Yeah.
we'll
minus.
do that.
300%.
We'll put the question mark there. And Mr. King, did you want to interject here? I know we.
Can't buy it on the open
Just
market.
point out that the cost of service issue is sort of in its own compartment. And essentially, all it's looking at is, are you cross-subsidizing one customer by the other? So
That's right.
there is, and we'll discuss this with the rate consultants, and we should with AMP. There's a wide variety of things that could be done. Bill points out about the investor-owned utilities in their not subsidized rates, but
No,
favorable rates to industrial customers.
it's favorable because it lowers the operating costs of
But
their
they're
production
looking,
assets.
they're looking very directly at certain factors.
Right.
What's the load size?
That's right.
Is it a consistent load? And what a utility wants is a large consumer that doesn't vary.
That's right.
And so if we had revisions to our rate structure, not that cross-subsidized, but that incentivized the most preferred customer type, it would actually benefit everybody.
Right.
There are also products that we've talked about that are not part of the rate structure now, like allowing the customer the ability to acquire their own power supply. So we transport power over our system. We have a product like that in the gas side of the operation. Some customers would find that a preference. So there are a number of things that we could do,
Absolutely.
and it doesn't really get into the cost of service. The cost of service is really asking, is the structure and the balance of responsibility from one customer class to the other appropriate? The one thing that we do need to just keep in the back of our mind, it's not a impediment, but any adjustment you make, what you wind up is having to cover overhead and administration over perhaps a smaller number of kilowatt hours. So there's no magic. If you benefit a customer in a new rate structure which reduces the number of kilowatt hours, then the overhead and administrative costs have to be borne by the rest of the customers, and that's why you just have to be aware. It's not a showstopper, but you have to be aware that adjustments you make have impacts to other ratepayers.
Yeah, and I believe you're talking more about some of the kind of opportunities we
Right.
may have down the road. Let's move on with the weaknesses. Thank you, Mr. King, for that. Go ahead, John.
So others, Dr. Miller?
We really, since the electric industry deregulated, it's created a real problem acquiring, I think, power sources.
Yeah.
Especially for the small utilities.
Right.
And therefore, we really lack the expertise in-house to really, I think, address that and stay in the mix in the proper manner.
So we can't buy on the open market. I mean, it wouldn't work for us to do it by ourselves and get out there.
Well,
which is,
explain why to me it wouldn't be.
So we would need a consultant or someone like that, I think, with the proper expertise to guide us, along with AMP, to be sure we're getting the best source of supply.
Okay. So I'm going to put it here, LEC expertise in-house. That's primarily the focus that I heard. As far as the procurement of the power, is that, or?
We need to have,
or-
in-house would be a little too fine a description. I think what we're trying to say here is that we need to explore having a consultant that is working with us exclusively as opposed to AMP, which is advising 130 different utilities at once.
Well, as far as capturing that as a current weakness,
We have-
you lack that, right?
we have the analogy in our gas utility where we hire expertise to help us with our gas purchases. So we lack expertise for electric power purchases.
Independent expertise.
Right.
Okay, independent, okay.
Good point. We rely on AMP. Who's looking at the whole for AMP?
Right.
Danville.
Okay, so I've
I guess this
captured,
is probably a simplified question. I'll ask the panel, or Joe, or Jason, or whomever.
Just work on that.
But if we were purchasing our power directly in 2014, would it have been less for our customers?
The market's real soft right now.
Been a lot less.
And if you play
Be a
the
lot
market,
less.
We learned that last meeting. Been a
Well,
lot
I
less.
see one no, and I see sort of, and I hear a lot less.
Power strips are anywhere from 3.5 to 5 cents a kilowatt hour. A lot less.
It's about a
And we were
third.
told that by AMP, and I confirmed that talking with 2 independent utility.
Well, I remember the terminologies that you used, and I don't know if you were directing this directly to AMP, but you related it to organized crime?
Yeah.
That was PJM.
PJM?
Not AMP.
The power strips are priced based on the time of day. So a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week power strip, that's going to be your cheapest electricity. A 10-hour-a-day, 5-day-a-week is going to be much more expensive. So there's no set amount per kilowatt hour for power strips.
But
generally.
unfortunately, when we compare the operation of Prairie State, which is a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day operation, to power strips, which are the same thing, we're not competitive. We're not close to competitive. And that's unfortunate because we believed that it would be a very competitive, we were told by AMP, this would be a very competitive, low-cost alternative for Danville. I was on the utility commission when they sold us that bill of goods. All right? I voted, let's do it. I was there.
Well, you
Didn't
might
happen.
want to qualify the conditions when you made those decisions. Bill, that, you know, we thought, well, I wasn't on the commission then, but you thought it was the best because
We did.
to buy it on the market, it was such up and down, it's such a risk. So
right.
you wanted some long-term stable supply.
Well, it's all about building a power portfolio, all right?
Right.
That's a strength.
And you know, the feeling was that costs could be controlled, and we would have a low-cost source of power. It would have a PJM pipeline. It did not have a PJM pipeline. Cost overruns have been horrendous. They can't keep the unit running. It's not good. You know? You're absolutely right. But
So
hey,
the answer is,
If
if we had been purchasing directly from a power source in
Right.
2014, would our customer cost been less or more? Or same?
I'm going to say the same, and that's, you have to understand, distinguish between the assets, like these generation facilities, and buying power on the open market. Now, we have purchased power on the open market since joining AMP. And you go to the market with your needs, and it's a bidding process. You're going to get access to the prices on the market, whether you're doing it directly or you have an AMP or somebody else do it for you.
It's like playing the stock market for that day, for the next day power. But investing in generating assets, you lock in at a stable rate, you can forecast, you can budget for, you know what it's going to be next year. It's just that with all the changes in the industry with fracking, natural gas has made the price of energy cheaper.
Except for 2014.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, I think one thing we may not be keeping in the forefront is, the fact of the matter is, Danville Power and Light was competitive.
Right.
Very competitive up until recent.
Deregulation.
Well, I mean, I'm even talking about even 2008, 9, and 10.
3 years ago, 4 years ago.
And maybe further, 12. We were not out of line until some of the events that took place the last 2 years.
Okay, let me say this. Can I say this? Let me kind of try to kind of summarize what we've been talking about here the last 10 minutes. To me, I'm hearing everybody talking, and it comes back to one thing. It comes back to one project. It comes back to one situation. We own 50 megawatts at Prairie State. I think we committed to that plant here in about 2006. I think that's correct, because I think I was still on the first time.
I think it was 2008.
Well, 2008 was when we did the final contracts. Huh?
We didn't join AMP until 2007. So.
I believe that took.
Well, what happens is that date's important, because when this is the latest and greatest coal plant. This may be one of the last great coal plants built in this country.
I think it's the last.
Right? And we committed 50 megawatts, which is a big base load, and then the EPA decided that the world was never going to have another coal plant.
Yep.
And I'm just giving you a little background here. And then a $3 billion, it was a $1 billion project at least, I think, wasn't it?
Prairie State,
Yeah.
$5 billion.
B with the billion project. And of course, it did not come in on time, and it did not come in on budget, because $5 billion contracts don't. So we got coal in a different RTO with high transportation costs, and we got it over budget, and it didn't come in on time, and it's still not working 100%. That's our problem. That plant has messed up the portfolio cost. Is that correct? Would you stipulate to that? So, you know, I believe if that's if you start thinking about what we've got and what our power supply, our profile is, our design, where are we getting our power from? If you look at that one particular example, you can answer a lot of questions about what we're doing and how we have put this portfolio together. And that's a real weakness. Okay, thank you.
So along those lines, I agree, and we made other decisions that even compounded that problem. But I think Prairie State might be something we want to put on the weakness list.
Put it as weakness. Prairie State.
Prairie State.
Prairie State
And that
costs.
may not be true in the future, but it has been to current.
What's our power costs going to come in on with our AMP hydro, the average kilowatts?
On what?
$120 a megawatt hour till the
What'd you
debt's
say?
paid off.
Okay, so another
12
weakness, another weakness is going to be our initial rates from hydro.
Hydro.
Can I make one comment before we leave Prairie State? I was able to spend some time last week with the new CEO and COO of Prairie State. The CEO has been on the job for 8 weeks, and he's already looking at efficiencies to the plant that can be made to make the plant operate at a lower cost. And the CEO has been on the job for 6 months, so they're looking at the plant and figuring out ways, how can we make this plant run more efficient? and I have a lot of confidence in them. They came from a coal background. They run coal plants elsewhere. So they seem like they have a good handle on this plant. They came to this plant because it is a new plant. It's got all the latest and greatest carbon emissions factors in it, and can run
Well,
a lot better.
I appreciate that, and I wish them all the best. And I believe that I believe these costs are a little one-off right now. I mean, they've got startup problems, big projects, gonna take a while.
Well,
But
I think-
today, it's a weakness.
I think the other
And that's
thing-
what we're talking about.
The other thing
Today's a
the other thing you have to think about is in a complex operation like that, where they have added a lot of downstream control systems, what you have done is you've knocked down the uptime for that plant. Because it has increased complexity, and assumptions, I'm sure, were made on uptime based on old technology. This plant is going to struggle to ever reach that kind of uptime.
They ran the best in the past 2 months than the plant has ever run since its inception. It ran at 93% in December, and
Which is
January.
great.
January is looking very good. I mean, yeah, January is looking very good.
But it's going to be a challenge to maintain that kind of operation. But just to point out, your initial rates on hydro are at 12 cents. Prairie State's projection, if I'm not mistaken, from the rate information that was provided to you by AMP in making the projections, is a little under 9.
What's that again?
Is a little under 9 cents kilowatt hour
For Prairie State?
No, yes.
It's 7.
For 15.
7?
Is that what was projected? I don't.
No, he's got his own.
With the latest refinancing,
Yeah.
The effective rate? Okay. Apologize. Thanks.
I think it's a fact that AMP has been very weak in the construction of new generation. And of the generation assets we bought into, the Fremont project, which is a natural gas powered project, is the only one that you could say has been successful in terms of the
Right.
cost per kilowatt hour.
We got any more weaknesses?
Oh,
Kind of move on with the weaknesses.
Would we, I know that on the strength, we put the speed of addressing utilities for a economic customer. What about, would it be a weakness, the rate discourages customers, industries from coming?
That's what we got, the rate structure.
Is that
Do-
part of
do
the
I
rate
need to-
structure? Well, I guess I'm
Do I
talking
need to-
about a weakness would be economic development.
Detrimental to existing and new
Yeah, you, okay,
customers,
we can do that.
Okay.
industrial customers.
That's a good way to put it.
Retaining and attracting.
We're also currently without directors for the utility and the
Good
electric
point, that's
department.
right.
That's a weakness.
Yeah, no
So,
director.
management, vacancies?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll jump over here and capture that last one again, Mr. Turpin.
We're currently without a director for utilities and electric management.
And I heard earlier that, and that may be something that you want to capture here, not only without, but maybe some of the transitions that you've had in that leadership. Is that something that,
We've had a real problem with continuity
Turnover.
of leadership, of management, top management continuity.
Frequent turnover.
Frequent turnover.
Of course, we should qualify, they haven't pursued the utility director's position until the outcome of this
Yeah, so
study.
we're in a catch-22 on that. We can't get a director
Yeah.
until we make this decision. Nobody's gonna want to come here and be a director of something.
We
That's
can,
utilities
we just
and-
can't promise them a job
and
forever.
electric.
Yeah, well,
which is two different.
Two different positions.
but the interim guy's doing a great job.
Yes, he is.
That's a strength. of
That's
it.
a strength.
Which, by the way, when we get through here, I would like to add a couple of strengths, but
Okay, yeah, that's fine. We can add them now if they're right on the tip of your tongue.
I don't want to change.
Can you
But
go
I-
over,
We have,
can we go over these right now? Can you kind of say them to me so I can,
Oh, sure.
maybe we can like think about something else? Let's get a little review.
I'll just make sure. Okay, so weaknesses we have listed right now is that you generate very little of your own power, that you're committed to buying power from other sources. Membership in PJM and AMP with a question mark. Cost of supply is a current issue. AMP power asset costs, rate structure, lack of expertise, independent expertise in electric power purchases. We captured that right, actually. Independent expertise.
That's good.
Prairie State, initial rates on hydro detrimental to new and existing industrial customers. Without a director for utilities, the overarching utilities, and then also the electric, and then the frequent turnover of the management.
And I think the negative publicity we've had in the electric department, especially as it relates to misuse of overtime and theft.
Yep.
That's a good point, that people are saying, well, led to extra costs, and that may have contributed to our rate increases, Didn't, but people perceive that.
Which begs to add,
I like that better, negative public perception instead of negative.
And do I need to add some more clarification to that?
That's good, just
Okay.
like that. We lack significant peak shaving assets.
that's true. Very true.
So what that
Peak shaving.
peak shaving. And we also lack significant demand curtailment. We have a couple of industrials that do it, but
Can I ask a question? Is demand curtailment a particular device or procedure that is aimed at industrial customers?
it's generally aimed at, in many cases, it's aimed at consumer or residential customers. And
Excuse, I'm sorry.
it's aimed at consumers, consumer residential customers.
Oh, everybody.
Right,
Okay, it's just not for industrial.
right.
Okay,
It
all right.
allows a local residential or industrial to opt in to allow the utility to cut back their demand on things like air conditioners or heat pumps to be able to manage the peak.
Any others?
We've had large increases in our capacity charges. Although that should trend down.
Okay.
Lack of,
And may I go on that is also residents not understanding capacity charges and what that's going to do to their bill.
That's right.
So what you're getting at is a power cost adjustment,
Yeah, public,
and a customer
they don't
doesn't understand what's
Yeah.
making that move.
No.
I think the weakness
Yes.
we have, and it's not the utilities, but we've got a large stock of housing that's old, not well insulated, and use a lot of power. And then people say that, in their house, the rates are $600. I don't know why I have a small house, but it's not insulated. It's not, so they don't understand that. And we've tried to get that across, but it hasn't always gotten
Yeah,
across.
the residential
Landlord
unit
doesn't
stock
care.
for,
Yeah, and the landlords don't care. They're not paying utilities.
So basically, current energy and efficiency in those, some of
their
those
housing.
residential houses and
In
residential
housing stock.
structures.
Yeah, and a lot of that's in rental,
Rental, yeah.
and particularly in rental units. There's really no incentive for the owners of the rental units to improve the energy efficiency.
Okay, so I put down here current energy efficiency in residential structures and included the rental in there to capture that piece.
And I hesitantly mentioned this, but at some point, we have to address strength or weakness of return to general fund. And the best way to capture that.
Do you have a
The weakness
suggestion?
would be, possible weakness would be the amount of the rate of return, the size of the rate of return to the stockholders. We've listed the rate of return to the stockholders as a strength, but what he's saying is it also is a weakness in the size of that rate of return.
Is that more of a current issue, or is that one of those that may be a threat down the road if that starts?
Well, it's certainly an issue now, but it would certainly be a threat also.
We're talking about the impact on rates.
Okay. So how would I best capture that in the current state?
I think we've seen, and y'all correct me if you're wrong, if I'm wrong, but I think we've seen in some of the information provided that rate of return may be larger than is expected,
And
industry-wide. And if I'm not stating, if I took something away from it different than you, then please say so.
Compared to a private industry, utility, I don't know that we're above what they get now.
Okay.
So I guess it's adequate rate of return, question mark, I guess.
Okay.
It's very difficult to find a survey among, that I haven't found any material that really specifically compares the rates of returns that municipal utilities receive that is compared to IOU, an investor-owned utilities rate of return.
I guess
I haven't seen it. If it's available, I'm sure somebody will tell
Could
me
we
about it.
compare that to the profit margin of your private companies?
Well, there's a whole lot of things I don't want to get into the aspects of the two. To me, there's a big difference. I would just say about this weakness that to me, the rate of return is one way to say it, but one of the weaknesses is that the size, the amounts of the transfers from Danville Power and Light, unrestricted fund balance, to the city's general fund in the last several years.
Which,
And that includes not only the budgeted transfer
Contribution.
every month, every year, but it includes other special transfers that have been made in the last 2 or 3 years. I've made myself clear on that for a long time, and that is a weakness. It's one of the reasons why we're sitting here. I know people disagree. There are people who disagree with me about that, but I believe that's part of the problem. It's been part of the problem.
well, Philip, you know, I've argued the same thing. It did, but we are talking about 1 year, I believe. But yes, I think that did not help the situation at all.
Well, that's transfers, and it's more than just that rate of return.
Right.
But at least we know is predictable. We might like it, but we know what it is.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm talking about transfers. Now, in addition to that, I have
Can I go back to the facts
Go
that
ahead.
he
All right.
provided us? Joe did give us some data. Our transfer amounts have ranged from 8% to 9.7% during the past 5 years as a return on sales. APPA reports that the median rate for transfers for municipal electric utilities of Danville's size is 6.4%. The
I
rate
thought-
for Atlantic Coast municipalities is 7%.
I thought I had read that before.
So if you look at the data that was provided, we are probably in the neighborhood of
3%.
30% higher,
Based on sales.
based on sales.
But rate of return on your investments, your assets, were not that high.
Yeah, now,
So,
yeah,
you know, what do you want to use?
well, munis typically measure themselves on a return on sale. And if you look at your private sector utilities, they typically earn from 13 to 14%.
Right,
Total return on investment.
right. So you're comparing apples and oranges.
Exactly.
Well, I went ahead just because, you know, it was said. I went ahead and put it up here, transfer amounts. Do I need to add anything to that? You all know what I'm saying there, or should I add them? And whether you agree or not, at least it's there captured for you to think about.
Yes.
Just say general fund.
Okay, general fund?
Yeah.
To general fund?
Yeah. Yeah, we never. I mean,
John, do you have a follow-up on that?
Okay.
No, that more than captured what I originally
Significantly.
hesitantly brought up.
Well, since you hesitantly brought it up, and I appreciate it, I have one I'd like to add, and this is, I believe, a weakness. Again, this is a governance issue, but this is my favorite issue. I think there's been a problem in the last several years in distinguishing capital projects, Danville Power and Light's capital projects that would, A, increase the sales of the business, B, cut the cost of the business, or C, provide reliability or safety. Generally, that's why you make business decisions to make capital expenditures. Raise sales, cut costs, reliability and safety, particularly in the utility, electric utility. Being on utility commission, we've been confronted with, in the last several years, some projects that were more, that were focused on either community development or economic development that really weren't, I believe, in the main wheelhouse of what Danville Power and Light's supposed to be doing. Or at least they were framed in such a way that Danville Power and Light somehow got to contribute to this economic and community development, which I don't believe is fair to the ratepayers. If the general fund wants to have economic development and community development, they ought to, those are general government functions to me, and not functions of the power of the utility to do that.
Or just to help clarify, are you referring to the one-time transfer that was done a couple of years ago for like $3 million?
No.
Or are
No.
you talking about the investment in power infrastructure? I don't understand what you're talking about.
There have been certain projects that,
I'll tell you what I'm talking about. I'm talking about one right now that hadn't been started yet. There's a $1.8 million that's going to be spent by Danville Power and Light to put the wires in downtown Danville underground. $1.8 million. River District project.
Okay, but
We don't put electric wires underground in Danville, except when we've got a River District project. Now, last night we had a meeting, we had our budget meeting last night. I'm looking at a $3.5 million, 7 years, $500,000 a year to replace all of the light fixtures in the city. Well, and so how much, so does Danville Power and Light get paid for the lights?
Yes.
Well, how much do they get paid? How do y'all figure that? Can you tell me how you pay them? We've already talked. I'm telling you, the light fixtures need to, the street lights in Danville need to be replaced. Apparently, somebody's decided that. Now, is Danville Power and Light in the business of providing street lights for the
voted
city?
on to take 'em
Or is
down.
it Danville Power and Light in the business of selling electricity? To me, that is a question. And and every year, there seems to be something that comes up, and I can't figure out where the line is. The line is always blurred. And I believe it's put us in a position of not ever having to make a bad choice or a good choice. You know, you just have a project, say, hey, Danville Power and Light will pay for it. And then, you know, we have a bad run and we got no reserve, here we are. And we gotta raise rates. And we gotta raise them right now.
So would that be classified as capital improvement investment?
I think that the city, there is a weakness in that Danville Power and Light does,
Capital
sometimes
decisions.
is imposed upon to make capital projects that aren't strictly in the
Capital
benefit of
decision,
the.
the
So-
capital
Capital
decision
project
process.
It's about definition.
I would
The
agree.
definition of capital improvements needs clarified. The
Well,
definition of capital improvements needs clarified.
Capital decision process.
The capital
That's it.
decision process, yeah, thanks. I agree 100%.
I'm not sure I understand here.
It's a good point. The streetlights might not be a good example.
So,
Yeah.
so
I
for
agree.
instance, if we go and we put a park in place, well, let's use the streetlights. What you're hoping to do is spur economic development in Danville. Let's put power underground instead of on power poles. It's going to look nicer.
Now, what's being contemplated, and the jury's still out, you're the jury,
Right.
on whether that project survives into the recommended budget to city council. But what Jason is suggesting is the streetlights for which the Power and Light or the electric fund gets a charge or a revenue from the Public Works Department, continue to get those revenues. It's a per year, per fixture. Changing them out, putting in LED, being able to consume less electricity, that it will pay for itself, improve the lighting, and it will have a wash as far as the impact.
Haven't seen a business plan. I asked a question last, and I've asked a question twice this week, and it's only Tuesday. How much do we make on, how much electricity are we selling for the lights now?
The way we charge for lights is
That was rhetorical. The answer is nobody knows yet. I've asked both those people sitting over there. They're good people. They do good jobs. I asked them a question. And I was thinking about it this afternoon that I really didn't ask the right question last night at that meeting. The question I should have asked was a question that we love to ask around here. What is the cost of service? What does it cost Danville Power and Light to have that customer, the city's street lights? And if you can't, to me, if you can't start there, how you gonna price it and how you gonna recover that $3.5 million you're gonna spend?
Okay, can I interrupt? We're talking about something that was on the table last night.
I'm sorry.
I'm going
I
to call it
apologize.
Elmo, if you're okay with that. Enough, let's move on. We've added on there the fact that we have a weakness in our capital improvement process.
We have that down.
And it's actually the approval of those capital
Okay.
improvements.
Capture
And
that.
we got an
on here.
opportunity. It could be an opportunity.
We can't discuss anymore because I have the opposite opinion.
We're 10 minutes till 6. Just
Well, I
to,
tried to, but I couldn't.
Excuse me, he'd
I
like-
have the opposite opinion. I think it's very appropriate to buy more efficient lights. And I think this was, as Joe said, a bad example. I think that is in the interest of our customers. And secondly, a city in Winchester, someplace in Virginia, just recently got all their utilities put underground. I think that's something we ought to aim for. You can't afford to do it overnight because it's 10 times more expensive. But I think eventually your utilities ought to be underground. If we start in the River District or we start someplace else, I think that's appropriate.
But is that a strategic decision?
That's a costly decision.
Well, I think
Run the
the
rates.
question is,
Right.
and it's to
And is,
all those come under
right.
the defined capital improvement process.
And that needs to
If
be
we
clear.
develop a
The
process
weakness is that
to
needs to be
decide all
clarified.
those things, where efficient lights are underground wiring, I mean, we need a process to determine if that's the best decision.
Okay. I gave us another sheet. We're 10 minutes till 6. I can capture a few more. I'm at the pleasure of you. I can stay as long as you want, but I do want to make sure that, you know, we have time for the public comment and anything else. So I'm here to do what you would like to do. We need to probably
Well,
summarize.
I think we can continue later. We haven't even got to the O's and P's.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think we're, I really believe, Mr. Chairman, I believe this is just a very good start, but it's only a start.
I agree.
Strengths and weaknesses aren't over yet either,
Right.
in my opinion. But I think we've done a really good job of getting some of the issues out in front of us.
Feet wet.
And I would certainly think there's some other items on the agenda that probably we need to address. And
Can we refer to our agendas just a moment in the last 10 minutes? I want you all to think about these agenda items, number 3A through F. I believe we did A and we started on B. We need to talk about the timeline. How best do you want to handle that? Can we start some polling now about when we want to get together? Is that okay?
We have a
When
Monday meeting scheduled for Monday, is that still on?
Okay, Monday, we're gonna have the presentation of the hometown folks, and that's, gonna take a
We are
while.
meeting Monday.
And that's probably all you're gonna wanna do that day, is talk about that, quickly look it over, and take that home and read
I'll
it.
hurry back from
Okay,
Aruba.
so that leaves out that date. So then we want to then start on our, proceed with the schedule of the 2 weeks from that Monday.
Ocean Club.
That's the first and third, I'm sorry, the first and third.
There-
So we want to go to the third, I'm so confused.
the third already has a general idea. Is somebody supposed to come here on the third Monday?
There's nothing scheduled for.
No, we are in new mode today, gentlemen. We're on the SWOT today. Okay, we're on the new program.
So we're,
So the 16th of February is going to be our next date.
which day?
I think it's the 2nd plus 14,
Okay, that's good.
okay?
If you want to keep on the pattern, the 16th would be the next slot.
Excuse me?
Yes.
I didn't hear
If you
that.
want to keep on the same pattern
Right,
that you
yes.
just mentioned.
Right. Now, and while we appreciate Kevin, I think, I don't know if Martha Walker's going to be available or not. I don't know how we need to work that out.
Kevin did a great job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I
Can
know
I-
this is important work, and it's, there's a lot to it, a lot of people involved, a lot of stakeholders.
And
Thank you for
I
letting me
personally
be
would
here.
like to continue with the same facilitator instead of having a different one each meeting.
Okay? Good?
If that's possible.
What I'm looking for that feedback.
Yep.
It's warmer here than in where I was from this morning, so. Galax and free. It was freezing this morning. So
If-
I'll do what I can.
Joe, do you have an opinion about this you'd like to share with us?
Well, if you would like to make use of the extension service, we'll talk to them. They're doing this as a favor. We don't have a formal arrangement for ongoing. But
Okay.
if that's
Yeah,
the entity that you think would serve you well, it would be
Got great
the
output.
combined resources of their team, Martha, Kevin, whoever else they could bring in, so that it would be that entity.
Right. And I appreciate you pointing that out. John, I appreciate y'all's comment about having one person. If we want to go with Kevin, fine. I wanted to mention Martha as an alternative because we talked to her yesterday. She's aware of what we're doing here, and her name had been mentioned several weeks ago when we had a meeting. A local person that may have some interest and understanding of the area. But as Joe says, I don't know how this schedule is going to fall, and we may use one or the other. I don't know if that's, is that gonna be all right if we have to, I mean, may have some scheduling problems like that.
I think we need to consider that. We also need to consider the fact we're talking about February and March, and Galax is going to be, 58 is going to be a little slick, surely one of those dates. So we need to have that flexibility.
Have a backup.
Yeah.
Okay, so we want to proceed with seeing how we can schedule both of them, Jay. Okay? You
And
think
I would
that's
hate
okay?
to
We'll do that.
overcommit myself or her, just, you know.
So what I would suggest we do is we
Yeah.
ask
We'll work it
the
out.
chairman along with the city manager
We'll work
to
it
get with your organization, look at the timeline that we're working to make sure that you can meet that. And if not, I think we could perhaps adjust a day or so to figure out how to make that work.
Okay.
And I would also suggest to you that on the 16th, when we come in here, I think we're probably not going to spend 2 hours talking about strengths and weaknesses. But I believe we're going to be ready to go on to the next part of the program. So be thinking about that.
We also, Mr. Chairman, want to schedule
Right.
Appalachian Power and PJM. They've offered to come in together, and Duke Energy. We have to actually see if that's a viability or not,
And Old Dominion.
in Old Dominion Co-op. So we're going to need to get their input as well.
Two of them at a time, if possible.
That's okay.
Do you want to do this sooner or later?
One time.
Do which?
Meet with these outside organizations.
I personally would like to see this information compiled and be available for us, and then for us to take the opportunity to meet with a couple of these organizations before we move to the next one. That's my personal.
Before we, you talking about, you want to talk to them before we have another meeting about this SWOT?
Well,
Well, we're meeting Monday with
Okay,
the
well.
consultants, right?
Yeah.
So that's all we, is that,
So we can
that's all
have
we're
this
gonna do
transcribed,
Monday?
and we can have this transcribed and handed out by next Monday. You can give it to us next Monday when we
and
come.
then I would look at the 16th perhaps to bring in Appalachian and PJM. And if Duke is in a position where they can talk to us, they're going to have to do some evaluation first. That could be done after.
And they need some information. Are we going to get that together?
Yeah, we'll have to talk to Jason, the city manager.
Good.
So you all want to go and talk to them, get that out of the way?
Well, that's because they tie into the opportunities, as our facilitator indicated. So we can't complete the opportunities discussion unless we've completed the
I
environmental
agree, I
study.
agree. So that's AEP and PJM, and then Duke and ODAC.
Duke and who?
ODAC, Mecklenburg.
Mecklenburg,
It's,
right.
it's,
I would
So
like
the-
to have
so the
Duke
goal-
and ODAC before AMP and PJM.
What about
It's not
Dominion?
going to be able to happen.
did you all hear that? Mr. Turbin suggested we have Duke and ODAC before AEP and PJM.
If possible.
Does that matter?
I don't think we can have Duke on the 16th.
Duke has a specific request that it needs to make. It has to schedule just to outline it. They've asked to have an understanding of the footprint that we currently have in the service region. They'd like to actually come in
It's all
and
information.
meet with you, Jason, along with the city manager and your engineering staff to understand the current footprint situation, feeds coming in, et cetera. And then they'll come back to us whether there may be some possibilities.
And some of the other information they've asked for, we already have in this book, but it has to do with peak demands, regular usage, those kind of numbers, which I'm sure you can put together.
Just logistically, let me offer a suggestion. We could set up an orientation for any of these, or all of these,
That would be great.
including,
That's even
we
better.
have, Dominion borders our
Sure.
territory too.
Yeah.
Trying to get representatives from all the potential bordering utility interests.
That's brilliant.
So we're showing them,
Maybe Dominion will even show up, you never know.
And a lot of them probably want the same kind of information in
Absolutely.
terms of what they think they can do, whatever they can
Right.
do, in terms of provide power supply or
so
whatever.
that might make it difficult to accomplish and have them come back as early as the 16th.
No question. There's no way Duke can make it back by then, I'm sure.
Well, so, all right, well, let's get back to the question at hand. What are we going to do at the 16th meeting? What is the agenda? What are we going to talk about? We're going to go back to the SWOT.
Back to a
Or do you
facilitator.
want
All right.
PJM and AMP to come back, you said?
APCO and
you can-
PJM.
We can discuss the opportunities, and just like strengths and weaknesses, we can add to them later once we.
Sure.
But we need to start that process
Well, I think so, too.
of opportunities and threats.
Mr. Chairman, I really would like to see us talk to APCO and PJM at that meeting.
Yeah, they already know the,
That-
If they're able to come,
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I don't have any problem with it.
I
I'm trying
would
to get
really like
everybody
to,
on the same
I would
page.
really like to hear from these folks before
Okay.
we go to opportunity.
All right, so the 16th, we will endeavor to have AEP and PJM in here.
right.
And I'm sure Mr. King knows who to talk to. And if he doesn't, I'm somebody else. You know who to talk to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why are you, PJM being a regional transmission, they're really not a source of supply. What's the purpose of?
PJM, actually, the presentation that was made by AMP Ohio was felt by executives at AEP and PJM to be not wholly representative of the situation, and they would like to be able to present their side.
There may be an opportunity to learn something there.
Yeah, that's the whole, an opportunity to gain more knowledge.
That video has been watched by many people in Columbus, as well as Richmond and other places.
Okay, the 16th, we will work on inviting AEP and PJM in, and if they are not able to do that, we will have Kevin back or Martha, and we will continue this process. Okay?
Excellent.
We would be making it clear to APCO that them coming on the 16th and providing information is not an exclusive. If the city chose to sell or change boundaries, it's keeping its options open. They just want to hear from APCO about their potential interest.
Well, and I think they also want to talk specifically about their role as our transmission
Okay.
provider.
Yeah,
Current state.
Current state.
Yeah, and that's sort of how they fit together. The RTO and the transmission provider are going to come in and to some extent try to
So that's what you want to
further
hear from them?
explain what, yes.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah,
I'd
that's
like-
the main conversation there.
But if they could wrap up with a summary, if there is any interest in.
Yeah,
acting.
they've assured us they have interest ranging from total purchase to selective services to geographic areas within our service territory. They're interested in any number of options. Just want to make clear we understand what they're being asked to talk about. And what you're saying is transmission,
Current state.
current state of the transmission, the delivery points to the city, how they get electricity to us because they are our transporter. And PJM likewise?
Yes.
Okay.
Congestion charges, pricing.
Okay.
What about AEP's interest in providing more source of supply in the future? Would that be?
Sure.
You could ask them that, but we've bought directly from them in recent years. We're open to buy.
Buy from
We're
them now.
buying from them now.
Buying from
through
now.
But they're just strips and small.
Right.
I'm talking about maybe a
Full
stable
requirements?
long-term supply.
For like a full requirements contract for all our needs? We could do that.
Yeah. So we know.
Okay.
I would like at one of those options meetings that we're talking about, someone reporting to us our capability of increasing our own power. What our options are.
Well, isn't that gonna be, didn't they say they'd be back in February with this peaking facility maybe in Danville?
Well, that's an AMP asset. That's not a Danville utility. That's not a Danville electric utility.
Well, that would
asset.
be one that we could buy into, is that correct?
But
That would be
an
like
option.
any of the other assets we could buy into.
Pardon me?
We could,
It would be a delivery point. We purchase power like it's just like any of our own delivery points, but it would be a generation facility. on
within our
system.
footprint.
Yeah. Minus the transmission and
Who
congestion.
borrows money cheaper, AMP or us?
Amp.
Anyway, just options of us generating more power for ourselves. If that is an option, and we need to go ahead and dispel the rumors or
Right.
make the rumors factual about any possibilities of us doing that and using the Dan River, and I understand that would be almost impossible. But we need to at least let the public know that that's impossible.
Very cost ineffective.
Yeah,
If it is
run of
impossible.
the river assets. Don't worry.
Okay, I'm gonna say it
How much?
again. On the 16th, excuse me, on the 16th, we're gonna talk about, we're gonna try to get Duke and, no, we're going to get AEP and PJM in here.
Yep.
And talk about transmission and congestion charges and RTOs and things, and then, yeah, and we'll do that. And in the meantime, we will be contacting the adjacent utility providers that may be interested in talking to us about some kind of collaboration, and we'll see if we can set up those meetings, or the city manager and the utility is going to reach out to these people and give them any kind of preliminary information that they need in order to have a fact base to talk to us. Okay? Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. Anybody have anything else they want to say?
Are you,
Share the public.
I did have a couple of things before we moved away. Could I get a couple of strengths added on there? And I'm sorry, I meant to bring this up before we took that, but there were 3 strengths that we didn't have listed, in my opinion.
I'll put this back in.
And the one of them was the strength that we have in the ownership of the Pinnacles power generation. The second is the additional strength is the recent upgrades that we have made to our distribution, which has certainly made it, as mentioned earlier, reliability, increased reliability. And then another strength that we have is that we have in place a policy that allows the customer to set his, somewhat have control of his bill through the time of day, time of use program that the city has.
Okay, time of day, time of use program.
Yes. And that's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Does anybody in the public have anything to say? Anybody in the audience have anything they'd like to say? Come on, Mr. Shossi. Come on up, Bob Shossi. He's a member of the Utility Commission.
I would just, like to add one thing about a weakness. And I think one of the biggest weaknesses we've had is when we have to go into territory that we aren't familiar with. And it happened when we had to make all these important decisions with AMP. We didn't know, we had to rely on what we were being sold. And if we decide we've got to go, we maybe want to sell Danville Power and Light, we're going to be in the same situation because we don't know what, we're going to have to rely a lot on what we're being told by American Electric Power, Dominion Power, or Duke Power, or whoever is going to be trying to sell that goods to us. I would suggest that somebody make contact with Christian Barton. It's a law firm in Richmond. They are very heavily into, let's say, very closely associated with the State Corporation Commission, and making rate cases, and they know very much what goes on with American Electric Power. They're very familiar with retail power in the country, and like when I was with Goodyear, with all of the industrials, or a lot of the industrials, use them as an independent source for trying to maintain low utility rates, and that's one of the reasons why utility rates with American Electric Power have been low. They've been very effective in that. So as an outside independent consultant, I would suggest that somebody make contact with them and, you know, see what they might offer.
All right.
That's...
Thank you, Bob. Christian Barton. Right. Anybody else from the public? Anybody else have anything they'd like to say tonight? Kevin, thank you very much for coming and being with us. I hope the weather was warm enough for you today that you enjoyed your time away from Galax. We look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody. And meeting adjourned.